is Jarlath Duffy, and for the next 15 minutes, this podcast is going to be an introduction to leadership. It will give you a flavour of what leadership is about and the type of things that leaders do. We'll start off with essentially what people would ask me is, what is a definition of leadership? And there are numerous definitions of leadership, what leadership is about and stuff. And I always use the simple definition is that leadership is what happens when you are not there. So if you're in a position of leadership and you have a team of people, you should be able to leave those people and trust them and not worry about them or what they're doing and not having to check in with them. And that's how you essentially do that as a leader. Is your primary role is to bring out the leadership that's in your people, because there's leadership in everybody and your role is to bring that out. So the less that you're pushing into people, the less that you're telling them, the better. So therefore what you're doing a lot of times as a leader is you're asking, you're pulling rather than pushing. So that brings us into the area for what's required to be a good leader. To be a good leader, you've got to believe in people. You've got to believe in yourself first and in your people second. You've got to care for people. You've got to care for their welfare. You've got to care for their learning. You've got to care for their development. So for me, there are three foundational skills that are required to be a good leader. They're listening, asking questions, and being able to communicate benefits that are in tasks that people are being asked to do. And we're going to look at those, but before we look at those, it's worth mentioning that the foundation stone, the cornerstone really of leadership and relationships that leaders have with their people is trust. And trust, if you don't have trust, it's going to be really hard for you to inspire people, to get them to believe in you, to get them to take responsibility when you're not there. So your first role as a leader is to build up trusting relationships with people. And one of the reasons you do that is because a leader has to look at things in the long term. And a leader has to appreciate that relationships are for the long term. And that if I can develop good and maintain good relationships with people, I'm going to have a fairly harmonious relationship with them for the long term. And everything, and leadership, the difference a lot of times between leadership and management, one of the key differences is management is really about the short term. It's about the here and now. It's about, getting things right now. It's about budgets, organizing, all of that. Where leadership is about going forward and bringing people with you. And to bring people with you, they have to trust you. And a lot of leaders, not a lot, but it can happen that people in leadership positions, they're often have a team with them and they say, come on, we're going forward. We need to make this change. And they go forward and they look behind and there's nobody there because they haven't followers. They haven't developed that relationship, that trusting relationship with people. Essentially, they're not leaders. And they don't understand what leadership is about. Because a golden rule of leadership is that it's not about you. If you're a leader, it's not about you. It's about the people that you lead. And what you're always trying to do then as a leader is you're always trying to walk in their shoes. You're trying to bring the leadership out in them. You're trying to instill a sense of belief in them that what we're about, that they can do it, that they can take risks, that they can start to embrace change, that they can come out of their comfort zone. So come back to yourself then as a leader. You have to have that sense of belief in yourself. You have to have that sense of trust in yourself. And and what you're always trying to do then is to find the courage that's inside you to overcome that boundary that we all face, that boundary of fear, so that you can go beyond the fear and start making the changes that are necessary and be an inspiration to the people that you're leading so that they will follow you. People then say, are leaders born or are they grown? Is it, in other words, is it nature or nurture? And it's a classic question that would come into a lot of the training courses that I would give. And for me, as I said earlier, there's a leader in everybody. And the leadership can be for different situations. And my role as a leader is to bring out the leadership in other people. And to bring out, as I say, that sense of belief. So what a leader is trying to do in a lot of situations is, a leader is not trying to use the formal positional power that they have, but the informal power. So my power as a leader should come from things like relationships. It should come by showing respect to my people. It should come by building trusting relationships with them, by giving them feedback, by communicating the benefits that are in tasks for them that maybe align with what's important to them. In other words, their values. So I build up a trusting relationship by giving good example as well. And one of the things a leader will always appreciate is that their behavior, in other words, what they do or say, is symbolic. In other words, it's given messages to the people who's looking up to them for inspiration and guidance. And my message always has to be positive. It has to be honest. There has to be a sense of trustworthiness in what I say and a sense of belief. So one of the things we talked in a previous podcast about was micromanagement. And micromanagement then would be that you don't give them the space to take the responsibility. So they're not allowed to develop. They're not allowed to grow. Where a leader allows people to grow and gives them the opportunities, the space, the encouragement, the feedback. And the leader then would also start by believing in the people and seeing that it's inside them. So there's one of the things that we will talk about further down the road, and we have mentioned it before, we will talk about it in another podcast, is the whole area about mindsets. So you've got to have a growth mindset. You cannot have a fixed mindset, because when you're a leader, if you have a fixed mindset, you will label people as, they're fixed. That's as good as Jarlath can be. Where in actual fact, when you have a growth mindset, you will look and say, well, look, there is so much more inside Jarlath. And my role as a leader is to bring it out in him, or it could be a her, obviously, as well. So that's the challenge.
So leaders develop talent.
Leaders develop talent. They allow it to flourish. Mm. They allow it to grow. They allow it to reveal itself. Mm. And we all know. I mean, it's that there are various things that can stop people from, I suppose, realizing their potential. And the challenge for us is if we can give them the supports to come through all that, mire, fogginess, anything that's blocking them as such. And that's what a leader does. And one of the things we will talk about as well further down the road, one of the big challenges that people say to me, Jarlath, we believe in what you're saying, but the challenge that we have is, where do we get the time for this? Where do we get the time? And that's something we will look at. We will look at time management. And I will just say at this stage that when you invest in people, and that's what leaders do, they invest in people. When you invest in people, they will pay you back 10 times what you invest in them. And that's where you will get the time, because they will take more responsibility. You will be able to delegate more to them. you will have more time as a result of investing time. So it becomes like a virtuous circle. So that's enough for today. Yeah, just to let you know that there'll be every 2 weeks we'll be posting a podcast on subjects related to leadership, and we'll be elaborating more on some of the things that we discussed today. In other words, today was quite a broad breadth of what leadership is about, and we'll be going more into the depth of specific things like skills, etc. And that will be every 2 weeks. And you can find information about this on my LinkedIn page, on my Facebook page. And also I encourage you to go to my website, which is www.jarlathduffy.com. And that's Jarlath. Thank you for listening.